Next up, we have one of the goats of our community, our state senator. Let me say one of the goats of our community. This is Tiara Mack, State Senator Tiara Mack.
Can y'all hear me? Nope. This
No, you're not just talking to the handheld part.
Oh, here. Okay.
There it goes.
Sorry. This has been an interesting day to think about it being a year after the tragic murder of George Floyd. And not only that, this past year and more has been marked by more Black death at the hands of state violence, systemic violence, and routine violence against Black, brown, and low-income communities. And it was hard today to hear that entire focus shifted onto one tragic incident and not the generations and decades of injustices that have led to situations like George Floyd. Earlier, Dr. Munoz talked about the violence that we experience, not just here in our city, but on a systemic level. The violence of families that are forced to work low-wage jobs, multiple low-wage jobs in order to provide housing and food for their young people. The violence of lack of quality schools in our communities. The violence of not having access to critical health care. The violence of a system that does not believe that every single person in our community is deserving of respect, no matter their identity, their race, or their religion. That is the violence that we still have not yet talked about at the statewide level. There have been a lot of shows of solidarity for Black lives. There has been very little progress to tangibly change the ways in which Black and brown and low-income people experience real and tangible change in the precipice of a national and global conversation about how we reckon with racism, not only in our policies, but in the practices of those policies. Earlier today, there was an article in the Boston Globe that said Black leaders discuss progress we've made in the past year. And a lot of those were symbolic, and a lot of those are really great feel-good moments, but they don't tangibly get at the root of what we are fighting for systemically in our communities. Since the events of last summer and marches where this area here had tens of thousands of people, we've elected more Black leaders, we've elected more leaders of color, yet we still have policymakers and gateholders who will not pass the legislation that Black, brown, and Indigenous and low-income communities are fighting for at our State House. This year we've seen an influx of quote-unquote progressive legislation, but we've seen an influx of legislation produced by directly impacted people of color in our state who finally have a voice and a position to implement legislation to have meaningful impact on their communities. And we can't allow this moment to pass us. They will say that they did their best in this year as we all get back to work and we see the crowds diminish and we see people having to go back to their low-wage jobs, going back to their homes that they can't afford, which are more than 30% of their income, going back to jobs that don't give them access to quality health care. And we still have to fight even harder as they think that they've passed the things that we've been calling for. We still do not have police accountability in our state. We still have the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, which prevents us having police accountability. We still have only just gotten a pathway to $15. We have not yet gotten a true wage justice in our state. We've been fighting to tax the wealthiest Rhode Islanders. We have not yet made a commitment that every single person in our state is going to pay their fair share so that we can fund our schools, so that we can fund our public health infrastructure, so that we can fund the community resources that we need. These are the things that we are fighting for and that we have to continue to fight for and move the needle even more each and every year after. If we allow them to think that we have gotten these victories, we will stop there. But we have to continue to fight and make sure that they know we are not done until we receive the justice that we all deserve.